So today, I have something very interesting for you guys. Not only do I have a set of speakers that most people can afford that sounds great for music, but I have a set of 5-channel surround speakers, that's 5 speakers, for $900. Okay, so I have 3 speakers to tell you about. We have the Fluance Floorstanders, the Bookshelf, and the Center Channel. And these are all part of their reference line. Now, if you don't know Fluance is a Canadian company. Woohoo! Yeah! That's snowing in Canada, by the way. That has been doing direct-to-consumer sale for quite a bit of a time. They make really affordable, budget-friendly turntables, cartridges. Do they make cartridges?
Not too sure, but they've been around since 1999.
1999. But I think they use Audio-Technica cartridges. So not cartridges. Speakers, of course, Bluetooth speakers, and so on. So they've been around. But I think they really stepped up the game in terms of the sound and the home theater aspect with these speakers in the reference line. I think they really nailed it with this one. Now, these speakers are really good for music and home theater, but we'll talk about the home theater aspect in the later part of this video. Now, I want to get in touch with the Floorstander first because this is an interesting one. This is only $600. For only $600, and we're talking about US dollars, don't get confused. US dollars, $600 for a Floorstander, and has amazing build quality. Now, one thing I don't quite get, and this has more to do with home theater than the actual, musical speaker aspect, because the one thing I don't get is why the front is this glossy black, right?
Yeah, it can get a bit distracting, especially if you have a projection setup of some sort.
Yeah.
But at least the sides are matte.
Yes, the sides are matte, and I love the finish. The walnut finish on this is fantastic, and they have the ash black as well if you want that, home theater blackness. But the problem is that for home theater, the front is glossy and has reflections, and I found at times it does bother me a little bit when I'm watching a movie or something like that, and there's flashing lights and stuff like that. So that's a little bit of a downside in terms of the home theater aspect, but all in all, very good build quality. I mean, compared to the Sony that we reviewed,
oh yeah,
this is like amazing build quality. Even the Bookshelf speaker that retails for like $180. Amazing build quality. I don't know how they do it, man. But how's the sound? Because that's really where the cake is, so to speak. Correct? Well,
sure.
The sound is actually pretty darn impressive on both the Floorstander and the Bookshelf, but they sound very different. In fact, I think overall speaking, right off the bat, I would say I actually prefer the Bookshelf for $180. And not just because of the price point. Just overall, I just find the Bookshelf to sound better than the $600 Floorstander for music.
Same here.
And to keep the Bookshelf speakers secure and to not fall off, we use the mall price sand-filled stands. And talking about security, today's video is brought to you by Surfshark. Surfshark is one of the fastest VPN softwares that allows you to browse the internet incognito all the time, which means you can browse worry-free of personal information leaks or breaches on all your devices and any platforms. Not only that, it keeps your locations private, allowing you to choose from many of their servers around the world. This also allows you to watch and enjoy shows or games that may be region restricted. And since I am located in Canada, I've been using the feature to binge watch shows only available in the USA and other parts of the world on Netflix. And right now you can get their holiday special for 83% off and 4 months free by using the link in the description below to sign up. And who doesn't like free? 4 months. So sign up. So let's go over some of the technicalities. So this is an MTM design, which means we have a mid-range woofer, a tweeter, and then a mid-range woofer again. And then this one is special that it has a down-firing woofer that is 8 inches. So that's for the extra extension in the bass, and we'll talk about that. It definitely has an effect on these speakers. And it also has dual ports in the back, which means that you have to take some care into the positioning of these speakers from the wall behind it. But I found that, initially I was scared too. I was like, oh, dual ports. Gotta be careful with that placement. But I found that about 1 to 1.5 feet from the wall behind it was pretty fine. I mean, pulling it out more didn't really do it much. And I think that has to do with the overall tuning of the speakers, the downfiring woofer, and so on. So let's start with the sound. I've tried a few tracks here, and then the first track that I tried was Running Away From You by Sarah Kay. Now this track, the vocals come out very nicely. Now the soundstage is a little bit constricted on the speaker compared to, the higher end speakers, and even compared to the Sony speakers that we reviewed. I think this speaker is a little bit more intimate sounding in terms of soundstage. It doesn't go past the speaker's plane itself. It stays where, within the speaker's plane. So I think that is a downside if you feel that you need this large soundstage. This speaker just doesn't do that, at least from my experience. Now when it comes to the high frequency, especially on this track, the Sarah Kay track, the high frequency doesn't seem to really extend as much as I really want it to. It seems a little bit dark and kind of recessed, and for the lack of better words, it kind of sounds veiled. And because of that, it sounds a little bit clustered with the rest of the instrument. The vocal is great, and the sound staging within its plane is great as well, but there's just not enough room, so to speak, for the imaging of individual elements in the music to really be distinct or articulate. So it sounds a little bit clustered. Now you may be thinking, well, that doesn't sound so great, Jay. You said it was a great speaker. Well, the thing is that I'm being very picky here. Overall, presentation-wise, it has a warmer tone to it. It has a little bit of that darker tone on the top end, which for people like Tujen, who doesn't like.
Yeah, I don't like a brighter speaker, and I want to play a lot of genres of music.
Exactly. So if you like to play music loud and you don't like bright, then this speaker is great, because unless you're that audiophile that wants to listen to every single element in the music, overall presentation is perfectly fine. And in fact, the bass is what's impressive with the Floorstander, as it should be. The downfiring 8-inch woofer really does its job. Like sometimes I hate it when I see stuff like that. I get excited, and then, well, it doesn't do much. Right, it's kind of like
you hear a lot of chuffing or distortion.
But this is actually really well implemented. It almost sounds like it's not part of the speaker. And what I mean by that is that it sounds like it's coming from a subwoofer. It has a subwoofer extension. So arguably speaking, and we'll talk about more of this later on in the part of the home theater part of this video, but arguably speaking, I really don't feel a need for a subwoofer with a speaker, and that is a lot to say for a $600 floor-standing speaker. The extension is quite impressive. Even on tracks like the Sarah Kay track, which the bass is there, with most bookshelf speakers, you don't really hear that bass. This has that presence, mid-range warmth. So I would say this speaker overall is kind of like a little bit of a darker sounding speaker. So if you like that kind of warm sound and you really like warm sound, then this may be one of the most affordable way to attain that without spending a lot of money and stuff like that to make your system sound perfectly warm. This may be actually perfectly warm for people who likes to play music really loud. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, moving on to the bookshelf. So bookshelf on this track, I said that the bass extension is not as impressive. Obviously, it's not as expensive, and it doesn't dig as low as the Floorstander, because the bookshelf is kind of like a normal two-way, right? It doesn't have that downfiring, 8-inch woofer or anything like that. So we have a port in the back. Dual ports in the front. So it's almost a completely different design. It kind of looks similar.
It's cool that the Floorstander has dual ports, and so does the bookshelf. It's kind of cute.
It's kind of cute, but it's reversed, right? The bookshelf has it in the front, right? The two little ports. In terms of placement wise, technically speaking, I think the bookshelf has a advantage, but and I get why, because the bookshelf actually has a mount on the back that allows you to put it on the wall. So I guess that plays into an effect as well, because these are meant to be used as surrounds as well, mounting and all that. So bookshelf, actually preferred it in terms of the high frequency extension. Is much more cleaner, much more crisp, extends more. It's not dark sounding anymore. I would say it sounds actually pretty neutral with a little bit of a warmth in the mid range. The bass, like I said, not as extended, but you still have good amount of bass. I'll say like good 50,
60 hertz, and there's a good chunk of punch too.
Yeah. Oh, and we'll talk about the punch in the next track, next track, but it has that as well. So the next track that I tried, and I love this track, is E Divo Acqui Esperando. I butchered that, and I knew I would, but you gotta start somewhere. Now I love this track because I tried this track on very expensive speakers. Back when I used to work at retail, I used to play these on Wilson Audio speakers, and those speakers range anywhere from like $20,000 to $1 zillion.
Yep.
And when I play this track, I can hear a distinct difference between even the expensive, ridiculous expensive, and so on. And what I mean by this is that this track gradually gets louder and louder and louder, but it has elements in the music, both vocal, it's like an opera. So basically this track allows you to assess microdynamics and macrodynamics. And that's what I love about it. And you can really tell when the speaker itself starts to fall apart, because it starts off soft and then it gradually gets louder, louder, and louder, and ear-splitting louder. So you can really tell, when does the speaker, really shine. So on this track, I found that the Fluance Floorstanding doesn't necessarily do too well, just okay. It's not terrible, but it starts to fall off at higher volumes. Like the high frequency starts to be a little bit less refined, a little bit shouty.
It becomes unpleasant.
And at really loud levels. But when it comes to the end of the track. But for the most part, I found that the macro dynamics was what the speaker is really good at. Like there's bass kick, like when the bass goes boom, right? You feel that in your chest, which you get with expensive speakers. But this one was like more exaggerated in such a way that may be pleasant for some people. It's like an effect, right? It's rather not realistic, but it kind of like gives you that whoa kind of effect. But I found that the microdynamics, meaning the little elements in the music, is what started to fall off as the volumes got louder and louder. Instead of being distinct at loud levels, I found those little elements like instruments and vocals and side vocals to kind of feel like it became like one zone kind of thing, if that makes sense. A little bit clustered. Now with the bookshelf, totally opposite.
It was a wow moment.
Yeah, so the soundstage, first thing I noticed was the soundstage is larger. There's more depth to be had than the Floorstanding, but obviously it doesn't have that oomph, right? It doesn't have that bass grunt. So I found the microdynamics, which is total opposite of the Floorstanding. I found the microdynamics to be great with the bookshelf, meaning the little details in the music really pops out, even at loud volumes. Spatial cues, loud volumes were good. But I found that as it got louder and louder, the macro dynamics, meaning the bass, the overall dynamic of the dynamicality of the original track, seemed to lack a little bit. It became leaner and leaner and leaner as it went louder and louder and louder, which is expected because the speaker is not digging in to those lower frequencies as the Floorstanding is. But overall speaking, I still preferred the bookshelf because it had a larger soundstage. It didn't have a scale of the Floorstanding, but it still was able to pick out those music without falling apart totally. The next track that we tried, and also the tone. I found the tone on the bookshelf seemed a little bit more realistic. I found that it was more neutral rather than the Floorstanding that sounded a little bit more darker, more warmer, more richer, which was a little bit too much for me. Now I like rich and warm sound, but I think that for my liking it was a little bit too much, too exaggerated. The next track that I tried is something I try all the time. I think Tujin's sick of this track now.
Yeah, I hear it all the time with so many different speakers, but it also made
Shows
me
you
realize,
a lot.
It shows a lot.
So, In My Secret Life by Leonard Cohen. So, this track is great at low volumes from bass to mid-range on the Floorstanding. So at low volumes, it has presence in the low bass frequencies, and that's what I love about the Floorstanding, because even at low volumes, you hear that bass, you hear that extension. As it gets louder, I would say to medium volume, the high frequency doesn't get veiled from the bass itself, and it seems pretty linear in terms of performance. It's at the higher volumes where the high frequency starts to fall off a little bit. When it comes to Bookshelf, it's great at all volumes for the low to high frequencies, but I felt that for the bass to kick in, really like grunt a little bit, it really needed some volume. I would say mid to high volume is where the speaker really started to shine in terms of that bass coming in, with the presence. So that's to be expected since it's a Bookshelf speaker. It's not the Floorstanding, so it's to be expected. Now next we have the 4-Wear by deadmau5. Now I tried this track for mainly the bass punch, how punchy it is. Now very simply put, I found the Fluance to have a little bit of a longer decay than the Bookshelf. So if you imagine like if I have a snowball, because snowing, if I have a snowball, I smack it on the wall, I will make like a pop, right? That's kind of the bass that I get with the Fluance Floorstanders, like a pop, right? It's not like a very tight kind of sound, but more of a scattered, and it slowly scatters away. Whereas the Bookshelf is way more punchier, way more tighter. It's almost like if I take a baseball and just smack it on the wall, right? You get a right instead of like a pop.
Pretty accurate. I like it.
Pretty accurate. Yeah. I think I like that.
Nailed it.
But nailed it. So that's what I got from this track itself. Way more snappiness with the Bookshelf, and you can see that for both the bass and the high frequency. Way more snappier, way more articulate than the Floorstanding. So overall speaking, you may now see why I said I may prefer the $180, less expensive Bookshelf for musical purposes. I would honestly add like a subwoofer, right, of my own to adjust the bass in the integration with the Bookshelf, because honestly, I think they nailed it with this Bookshelf. It's not placement sensitive. It's meant to be wall mounted, and you are left with a speaker that is pretty darn neutral, that you can use with a subwoofer of your own if you want that extra bass in the lower octave.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. I think the Bookshelf is insane value.
Yeah, and we switched it right back and forth, so we were just like.
But then when it comes to home theater,
right,
that's where it kind of changes,
and
right?
that's where it changes, and we'll talk about that. So for home theater, now I've been watching a lot of different stuff on Netflix. I've been binge watching a lot of stuff, but one of the things that I've been watching is Lost in Space. Now, Lost in Space, this is, in the beginning I was a little bit skeptical because it was like robots and stuff, but trust me, watch that show. It's pretty cool. Now, if you're a little bit, not into sci-fi and stuff, then you may not like it. But I've been watching this, and the point here is that it's in space. It has, large, sound effects, and it goes, into really low frequencies at times, rumbles and stuff, robots and space, perfect combination. And at those times, you want the Floorstanding because you can really get away without a subwoofer.
Yeah, seriously.
In fact, here's a funny story. So I have the SVS subwoofer with me. Now, I didn't connect it, right? Because I was lazy. I was like, I'll connect it later. But then the bass I was getting, I was almost like, wait a minute. Did I connect the subwoofer? So I actually went and checked, and in fact, the subwoofer wasn't there. So in a small to medium-sized home theaters, you can get away without a subwoofer. Now, obviously, I'm going to recommend that you get a subwoofer if you want that extra amount of bass and that real home theater effect. But for a budget under $1,000, total $900 for the center channel, the surround bookshelves, and the front Floorstanders, it is an amazing deal that is affordable if you're looking for a home theater that is much better in quality than something that you can get at Best Buy for a $900
home theater
in a box kind of system. So I'm very impressed, and again, the center channel, just like the bookshelf has very clear dictation. Now it's not as good as like the KEF home theater system, or even Tujen's Ultra KEF home theater system, or even ELAC, or those systems. But those systems cost like 3-5 times more, if not more. Right. But this is under a $900 system for a home theater, and it sounds good for both music and home theater. So what I've been doing a lot is actually using my power node to use this for the front two speakers for music, and at times I will use my receiver for watching movies and stuff. So it works out perfectly. Now you can also play music with your receiver. You'll need a power node, as I said, but that's just something I've been testing myself, and it actually sounds pretty fantastic. Now one thing I will note here is that the Fluance sounds as good as it is with a receiver or a higher quality amplifier, in my opinion.
It's not too picky.
Yes, there is some improvements with a higher quality amplifier, but it's made so that it's not really picky with its amplification, and that's what I found. And I think that's a smart move by Fluance, because most people using this would be using it for both home theater and music, and they don't want to have like drastic changes with the amplification. So whatever you plug into it, the Fluance will retain the similar performance, at least from what I've tested. And so whether it's a receiver or a higher quality amplification, it really doesn't matter. In fact, I would say stay away from high quality amplification, because you're just spending more money there to power these speakers. So if you're looking for a budget speaker that's meant for music and home theater, I think this is a really good deal, especially...
It's a really good gateway drug. A quality
It's a gateway drug. Now, overall, if you're looking for just one set of speakers that will really impress you, I would say try the bookshelf, $180. I don't think you can go wrong there. I was really impressed by it, and quite frankly, it's right up there, right between side by side with the Sony speakers that we raved about. I would say the Sony, it's really hard because the Sony doesn't have the bottom end of the Fluance, but the Sony has the high frequency and mid-range tone that I like more than the Fluance. So it's like a...
But then there's better build on the Fluance.
It looks much better. Like I can live with the build on the Fluance versus the Sony.
You nick those Sonys, you're gonna see MDF.
Yeah. Well, you just look at them and they're gonna get nicked, right? So all in all, I mean, you can't go wrong either way. I think both are phenomenal value for what you get out of them for the money. So I wish you all well, and this is it. Peace.